the line, so I'd like to welcome to Well-Armed Radio Jonathan Steitz, who's the candidate for the 21st Senate District in southeast Wisconsin here. Jonathan, welcome to Well-Armed Radio.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me.
So I'm trying to get my syntax correct. Do people usually say Senate District 21 or the 21st Senate District, or are they kind of interchangeable?
I think it's pretty interchangeable. I usually say the 21st Senate District.
Yeah, and this district has been. Is this the first time there's been an election under these boundaries for Senate?
That's correct. It's a brand new district. That was part of the redistricting in 2011, and so it encompasses. For those that are familiar with Wisconsin, it encompasses basically all of the western parts of Racine and Kenosha counties.
Pretty much the cities of Racine, cities of Kenosha are excluded. That's the 22nd.
That's correct. That's
Perfect.
Correct.
So if you could take a minute, tell us a little bit about yourself. My thoughts here, where you grew up, college, your professional career, favorite hobbies, family. Kind of run down the line for us. Just give us a little bit more information, background on yourself.
Sure. Okay. You may have to remind me as I get in, and I'll try not to make this too boring. But I actually grew up in Texas. I grew up in the suburbs of Dallas, and I lived there till I was 20 years old. I went to the first 2 years of college in that area, and then I moved up to Southern Illinois and graduated from a small school there called Greenville College. And professionally, about a year after I graduated from college, I actually started my own business and a small company that I grew and ran for about 7 years. But we did sound and lighting and staging and event production for concerts and civic events and conferences and all kinds of stuff like that. Had a lot of fun. Actually, I mainly worked in the Christian music industry, so toured with a lot of different bands and did that kind of thing. So it was fun while I was young and before I had kids. But once we started having kids, I knew it wasn't going to really work because I just traveled all the time, basically. So I won't go into a lot of the minutia, but I had the opportunity. I ended up selling my business, and I went back to school and got my law degree and my MBA from Northwestern University. And by that point, we moved to Kenosha in 2001 to the Kenosha area. And so we lived in Kenosha while I was in school. I commuted down to Chicago and Evanston for 3 years for that program. And that had a lot to do with me wanting to get more involved in public policy and politics at some point in the future. So once I graduated from that in 2007, I went to work for a large international law firm, and we actually moved over to London for 3 years. And so we got to live abroad for a little while and moved back, continued working for the law firm for a couple of years. And then a couple of years ago, I actually moved career positions, and I now work for a company called Baird, which is a Milwaukee-based financial services firm, and I do investment banking. So I do a lot of M&A work and equity capital markets work. So that's kind of my
yeah, and then as far as and I'm going to probably come back to this one. I got two more questions for you. I wanted to ask you about your hobbies and just a little bit about your family life, but nothing personal, but just as far as that goes. But I did have a question. You said London for 3 years. It's been interesting to me because socialism being such a big topic and something here in this country, and we think about European socialism. Any observations having lived over there in terms of medical, socialized medicine type things?
Absolutely. I mean, it was an eye-opening experience and, confirmed a lot of things that I believed anyway. But, I was fortunate enough that part of my benefits package is that we had private insurance. So, we had top-notch health insurance, but that's exactly what they have over there. They have a two-tiered system. They have those that can afford a private insurance, have much better insurance or much better health medical care than the general population. And it's basically, I want to make sure I word this the right way, but being in medicine over in London is a very middle-class profession, meaning that the best and brightest people over there go into banking or go into law because, that's where the financial rewards are.
Sure.
I personally like the fact that in America our best and brightest very often go into the medical field, and that's the way I think we should continue to encourage.
Yeah, and not to get too far off on a tangent here, but it's something very interesting to me. I mean, one of the things I think people don't realize is that even though some of these other countries that have socialized medicine they benefit from what comes out of the free market system here in this country, and I think there's a huge unknown. And when I say unknown, I don't think it's as unknown to say that there's going to be a huge loss for medical advancement when the medical superpower of the world, the United States, where it's profitable to have innovation and profitable to be in the medical industry, when that disappears, the rest of the world, I think, is going to suffer as well. And I think that's something that people don't realize. I mean, for example, we have people that get drugs from overseas, Canada Drug Service and stuff, and it's cheaper, and those drugs come from overseas. But there's without the United States and the medical system here, I think a lot of that's going to disappear because there is no big engine where the benefits can flow out to other places where they have socialized systems that wouldn't provide for those kinds of advancements.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, the bottom line is the free market system encourages innovation, and America is definitely one of the innovators, in all fields, but especially in medicine. And so anytime you take away the free market system, you put a damper on innovation.
How about favorite hobbies in your family? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, they're kind of interrelated right now because my favorite hobby really is my family. I've been married for almost 19 years to my almost high school sweetheart. We started dating the summer after we graduated from high school. But we have 4 kids. We have 2 boys that are 11 and 9, and 2 girls that are 6 and 4. So definitely keeps life busy. My free time is very often filled with going to soccer games or going to soccer practice and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've got
but they're great.
My fiance has a 12-year-old son, 11-year-old daughter, and then an 8-year-old daughter. And the 11 and 12-year-old are both into basketball. So I can relate. This past winter's been basketball game after basketball game after basketball game.
Yeah.
So, well, excellent. So,
but it's fun. I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, it's okay. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, jumping into the topic at hand, as far as the election, and when is the primary? What's the date for the primary election for the seat?
Primary is August 12th.
And effectively, I think, not to be presumptuous, but the way that the district is drawn, the demographics of the district, composition of the district, pretty safe bet to say that the winner from the primary is likely, very likely to be the candidate or elected to the seat.
Absolutely. I mean, I even go further than that, and that's really one of the reasons I got into the race is because the 21st district now is one of the most conservative districts in the state, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that whoever wins the primary is going to win the general election. And in fact, there's no Democrat that's declared at this point. The incumbent, because of the way the districts have changed, is actually a Democrat. The incumbent is John Lehman.
Right.
And he's not running again. As some people may know, he's announced that he's running for lieutenant governor, which I think was a graceful way to bow out of this race because he knew that it wasn't much shot of winning his district.
Yeah. So I want to talk about a couple things, and some of this is, I'm going to go on a little bit of a monologue here because I did some research, and this is one of the reasons that this seat was interesting to me was because I wanted to talk about Senate Bill 93 and constitutional carry because there's been some conversation on this lately, and my observation was that the challenger or the other candidate is Van Vanguard, and it appears to me that he's really trying to position himself in a lot of ways as a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and my feeling is a stronger supporter than he really is, and that bothers me when people try to leverage principled gun owners for their political purposes. And I mean, it's great for people to take that issue and be a champion of it when I think they're authentic. But that was my concern here. I don't doubt that Van Vanguard supports concealed carry, but I call these types of people Second Amendment light drinkers because they have this, in my opinion, a watered down view of the Second Amendment. They definitely can call themselves concealed carry supporters, but in my mind, I see a differentiation between concealed carry, which connotes permits and registration and fees and government taxes, from but that's not what the Second Amendment, again, in my opinion, and I think an educated historical view, I don't think that that's the same as being a Second Amendment supporter. So I listened to past archives of Vicki McKenna's show, and during that time, this is during the Senate Bill 93 debate, Van had proposed and advocated for much stricter forms of shall issue than what we ended up with. On that show, he said that hunter safety wasn't good enough training for concealed carry, which right now in Wisconsin, hunter safety does suffice for proof of training. On Vicki McKenna's show, Van had also said that small arms military training wasn't enough either. Both of those forms of training right now are acceptable proofs of training. So I found it frustrating that he had promoted himself as an original co-author of the bill, Senate Bill 93, but my research indicated that he wasn't added as a co-author until after the bill passed the Senate. And I think to be out representing a person representing themselves as a champion of Second Amendment, suggesting they're an original sponsor of Senate Bill 93, I think it's misrepresentation at best and maybe even deceitful. So that's my lead into this next question. And original Senate Bill 93 was constitutional carry, and that's my first question for you: is where do you stand on constitutional carry? Forget political realities of Wisconsin aside, but from a principled standpoint, do you support constitutional carry? No permit, no registration, no fees.
Yeah, I am absolutely 100% in favor of constitutional carry, and I think you kind of hit on it already, but it really to me goes beyond just this one issue of constitutional carry, and it has to do with really your political philosophy and what you think the role of government is. And I come from a school of thought, I don't think that our rights are granted to us from the government. We have natural rights, and one of those rights is the right to defend ourselves. And that's embodied in our Second Amendment, obviously, is the right to bear arms. And I don't think the government should be involved in permitting or licensing or testing whether, you're qualified to exercise that right, any more than I think the government should be involved in doing any of those things, permitting or licensing our freedom of religion or our right to free speech or any of those items. So I'm very much, philosophically in line with what you just said, and the fact that, I do believe that Americans have the right and should have the freedom to defend themselves.
Yeah, excellent. And so constitutional carry, understanding, and this is something that we pro-gun folks and even constitutional carry supporters had to debate during Senate Bill 93's moving forward. There is a political reality in Wisconsin, and that is that there's it was my feeling that we likely could have gotten constitutional carry passed here in Wisconsin back in 2011, but for I think Governor Walker came out very shortly before as the bill was heating up and said that anything that came to his desk should have a permit and training. So, there is a political reality here in Wisconsin that we have to deal with, and sometimes that means steps and baby steps forward. But one of the things that I've been frustrated with, and this is over the past, seeing things happen over the past year, is that there was I think some behind the scenes things that kept pro-gun bills from moving forward in the state legislature. So I guess just my second follow-up question is, as far as constitutional carry goes, and understanding there's this political reality in Wisconsin, can you make a commitment to the listeners of the show and Wisconsin Carry members that, one, you'd vote for constitutional carry in committee and on the floor of the Senate without reservations, and then the second piece of that is that, that from where you sit, you wouldn't be involved in any crafty tactics to make sure that this thing never came up for a vote, because I think that's what we saw. There's a lot of people that said, they would vote for it, but then they did some things, and that happened, I think, with Senate Bill 93 the first time around, but then they did things to make sure they didn't have to vote for constitutional carry. Can you make that commitment?
I'll absolutely make that commitment, and I even want to go further than that. I'm going to be a leader on this issue, and this is, one of a handful of issues that I am running on and that are very important to me. And you mentioned there are political realities, and obviously I will be one legislator, in the state government. I can't do everything myself, but one way that we start getting constitutional carry and have that pass is we make sure that we elect the right kinds of people to the Senate and to the Assembly. And I will tell you this, just broader, one of the reasons that I'm really running and passionate and have a a real sense of urgency to run now and not just wait like a lot of people encourage me to, is that, I think we have a real opportunity in Wisconsin right now with the governor that we have, with the strong majority we have in the Assembly. And the Senate, quite frankly, right now is a real problem. And we've got a block of moderate Republicans that are keeping a lot of the more conservative agenda from going forward. And that, applies to constitutional carry, definitely. It also applies to a host of other issues. And, one of my campaign messages, and I don't want to belabor the point, but, we're all going to be working hard to elect Governor Walker to a second term, and we should, and I think that he will get elected to a second term. But if we don't have the right people in the Senate, he's not going to have as an effective a second term as I think he could have. And when we have a district like we have in the 21st, that it's a very conservative district, we've really got to make sure we're taking that opportunity to send a solid, reliable conservative to lead our state.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to stick with legislation for a second. We've just talked about constitutional carry. Now I'm back to the political realities. Last year we had Assembly Bill 9, which is one of Joel Kleefish's bills, and that bill died in committee. It had its public hearing, and then once Wisconsin Carry turned up the heat on it, it got pulled from the committee calendar right before the morning or the evening before the vote that was supposed to take place the next day. And the piece of Assembly Bill 9 that we liked was that right now, if someone drives onto school grounds and they're concealed carried in their vehicle or something, and I think I'm speculating, but I suspect that there's a lot of parents who go to pick up their kids from school and pull onto the school parking lot and don't unload their gun and put it in a case. And if you don't, that's they're committing a felony here in Wisconsin. And I think the risk of someone making an innocent mistake and ending up with a felony, in fact, it just happened here in Milwaukee last week. There was a concealed carry holder who was charged with a felony for going onto school grounds. Now he had gotten out of his car and walked into the building and then went back to put his gun back away. But what do you think the prospects are for advancing legislation? And here's the constitutional carry would be one. School grounds carry is another. And when I say school grounds, I'm not necessarily saying in schools, but some kind of a immunity for being in a parking lot with your concealed carry license and in a vehicle, just to insulate people from a potential felony when they innocently go to pick up their kids from school. What are your thoughts on the prospects of that actually advancing? We've got Governor Walker, who may have presidential aspirations. I think by the time the next Senate is in session, he'll have been reelected to governor, so we won't be worried about political implications for his election. Well, what do you think the prospects are for those kinds of legislation?
Well, I think that we have a real chance, again, if we can elect the right kind of legislators, that we have a real chance to get constitutional carry passed in Governor Walker's second term. And, if you look at some of the states that now have constitutional carry, it wasn't always done in, at one time. A lot of times these things have to be done in a process, and now people are used to the idea that we have carry with a shell issue permit system. And I think, if as long as we have the right people elected, that we can get this through. It's becoming more and more of a mainstream issue. I'm sure Nikki Haley down in South Carolina came out not too long ago in support of constitutional carry.
Absolutely.
I really think that not that anybody's asking me, but I think that it's something that if Governor Walker has presidential aspirations and wants to prove himself a conservative, that's that he would support constitutional carry.
Yeah.
And as far as the other, the school grounds issue that you mentioned, I know people that have to be careful that regularly carry, that they don't, they purposely drop their kids off, across the street from school. And so forth, to make sure that they don't cause problems. And I do think that's an issue that shouldn't be terribly controversial to craft. And I haven't looked at exact language, but the idea of having some kind of safeguard that if somebody has a gun in their car and they're a concealed carry license holder, that shouldn't be a problem for them to be picking up their child from school.
Yeah, good. The next one I had was return of property. We've seen Nazir was a gentleman, armed citizen, concealed carry license holder who used his gun in self-defense in a Northside Aldi's, and it took him over a year to get his gun back, and at that point he had to go to court and do the return of property petition to get his gun returned, even though within a week of the shooting, using his gun in self-defense, the DA had ruled that was justified. The getaway driver had been released from jail before Nazir even had his gun back. So that was one instance I was going to point to. And then Andy Kachansky, who's the bartender owner of a bar, Kachansky's Concertina Beer Hall, who shot and killed armed intruders, robbers, back last August. He's still waiting to get his gun back. Now, I did talk to him this past week, and he thinks that he may be getting it back soon. But do you think, would you be willing to support legislation, affirmative return of property in a situation where concealed carry license holder or anybody who lawfully uses their gun in self-defense, once the DA decides that that it was justified, would you be willing to support legislation that would affirmatively return property to people in situations like that?
Absolutely. And, I want to be careful that I'm not, making pie-in-the-sky commitments where I'd obviously have to look at specific language. And I can see that there would need to be time for investigations and things like that. But certainly conceptually, when you've got a citizen who's done absolutely nothing wrong, they've followed the law, and they've been forced to use their gun in a situation where they've protected themselves, then there's absolutely no reason that they shouldn't have the right to their property back in a timely manner.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of, I'm being. I have ulterior motives here. Bringing this up, I'm planting the seed because I think that, what we see, I think anybody who takes a close look at this, I mean, we see drunk drivers that drink and drive and they get their vehicles back and they're committing a crime. And then we see,
right.
You could say there's establishments that have crimes take place and they collect their evidence and get them open for business, a day or two later. So I think that there's currently laws in place in Wisconsin that would return that allow the weapon to be tested and gather the evidence and then return it back. So yeah, I just plant that seed that's something that it actually came up at the Wisconsin Carry annual meeting from one of our attorneys that he's from Georgia and he's part of Georgia Carry, and they've had success with that kind of legislation there. So I'm planting the seed with that here. What do you think? What do you think would be, now back to the primary challenge here in your district? What do you think your biggest difference from Van Vanguard is?
Well, I mean, I think, there's a number of issues, and you've already highlighted some of the issues related to Second Amendment. Really the vision of who I want to be and why I'm running for this seat is that, I am really, my main area of focus and expertise is in tax policy and budget policy, and I've, obviously, I already mentioned my education, and I've had a solid background in the private sector, really understanding how tax policy affects businesses. And I want to be somebody that goes into the Senate and really works to simplify our tax code. I have called for eventually, and it's a long-term goal, but eventually eliminating the income tax in Wisconsin. When I first said that early in the fall, I got a lot of funny looks, but since then Governor Walker's come out and said that that it's an idea worth looking at. So, I do think that there's political will in the Assembly, certainly, and we need people in the Senate that will work for things like this. I've been very, very impressed with some of the young conservatives in the Assembly that have solid business backgrounds, like Adele Kiyanga, for instance, that have, really come in a short time and made a huge difference as far as tax policy goes. And we don't really have anybody like that in the Senate, and that's who I want to be. So, I am a principled conservative. I'm going to be a reliable conservative voice. Go back to your original question, what are the main differences between me and my opponent? I really, as I looked back at his record, and I don't think Van's a bad guy by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that when we have a solid conservative district like we have, we don't need more moderate Republicans in the Senate. We've got to take the opportunity to make sure that we're electing solid, reliable conservative leaders. And I think on too many issues, including the Second Amendment issues that you've already mentioned, but also on Act 10, on some of the school choice issues that are near and dear to my heart, Van has not proven to be a real conservative leader. He's been too often somebody that eventually comes around, takes the right vote, but after a lot of negotiating, after a lot of arm twisting, and he hasn't been a real leader on these issues. I want to come in and be a real leader.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my final serious question. You've kind of maybe alluded to it here, but and I'm not trying to push someone because we're sometimes very myopic here in the gun rights world. But if there was one piece of legislation that you find yourself most passionate about, you get to Madison and there's one piece of legislation you could pass, what would that be? Something tax related, or what would you say?
If you'll humor me, I'm going to say two issues, and I think they're both related. I am dead focused on creating jobs in Wisconsin and making sure that Wisconsin's competitive. And so, right now we've had a great start under Governor Walker, but we are still a high tax state, and we've got to do a better job. So, I think the first issue that I've already mentioned is our tax code, and rewriting our tax code to be simpler, to lower taxes, and like I said, eventually eliminate the income tax. The other thing that I think that we desperately need that I'm going to be a leader on is right to work. I've come out, I'm in favor of right to work. I think that it's time for Wisconsin, and it's a competitive issue. We've got to attract jobs to Wisconsin. Indiana and Michigan, right in our back door are now right to work states. Any manufacturer that's looking to leave Illinois, which a lot of them are, and if they're trying to make a decision between Wisconsin, Indiana, or Michigan, right now the fact that we are not right to work puts us at a competitive disadvantage, and I want to make sure those jobs are coming here to Wisconsin.
Yeah, absolutely. I lied to you. I'm going to throw one last one at you because this is one that I think about a lot because I have a real problem, and I don't want to start to bias your answer. But what do you think about we've now got, I think, the Bradley Center, and they're talking about tax districts for that. What's your feeling on that?
I'm not in favor generally of the public sector subsidizing the private sector. I think that the private sector should be any private enterprises should be self-sufficient. And again, a lot of that comes back down to if we don't have such a burdensome tax code, then you don't have to have all these special interest tax breaks and so forth, which is another reason that I wanted to simplify the tax code. So if local voters want to approve taxation and things like that, I would disagree with them, but that's their right to do so. But I certainly wouldn't agree with having a regional or a statewide tax to support a new arena.
Yeah, absolutely. So now some more off the cuff stuff. I'm going to throw some things at you. What was your first gun?
If you consider it a gun, I had a little air pump, a BB gun when I was probably 6 or 7, I think. Got a lot of aluminum cans with that thing around the neck.
Yeah, is that the one, the stock where the stock comes out to pump?
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
You get pumped the more you pump it, the harder it shoots, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And then I guess my first kind of real gun, I had a 22 that was a hand-me-down from my older brother. By the time I was 10 or 11, I'd say probably. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite carry gun?
I have a Glock G19 Gen 4.
So the G19 is that? I was going to say that's a 9mm. Gotcha. Yeah, I've got my first gun was a 40 caliber, the Glock 23, and still got that one. So now I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to test your Second Amendment credentials here. So I'm going to give you a quote, and I'm going to see if you can tell me who said this. So here's the quote, and this is a who said it. Quote starts off. I want to say. It says, I want to start, let me start over. I want to say those fighting words for everyone within the sound of my voice to hear and to heed, and especially for you, Mr. Gore, from my cold, dead hands. Who said it?
Oh, I know that. That's Moses himself, the late, great Charlton Heston.
See, you almost threw me for a second.
I'm right on that one, aren't I?
You're correct, but when you started, I heard the M sound coming out of your mouth, and I'm like, oh, he's going to get this one wrong. But no, you're right. Charlton Heston, absolutely. So now extra credit for you if you know when and where he said it.
I think it was at an NRA convention. I've seen the video. I remember he holds that musket over his head.
Yep, that's the one.
It was a great, iconic moment.
Yeah, NRA convention. That was Charlotte in 2000. That video. I watched it again when I was coming up with that question. I watched that video this weekend. I've actually played it on the show here, the audio before, and it's one of my absolute favorite videos. And it reminds me of what I wish we had more of. I mean, just what a phenomenal the way he delivered that message. I mean, obviously the guy's an actor, and he was spot on, but just his tone of voice and his presentation, his delivery of that message that day, I thought just iconic, and what a huge loss for the voice that he gave the NRA and the Second Amendment. But yeah, that's one of my favorite videos. It still gives me chills watching it. So here's I got another one for you. I'm going to push you back in history for this one. Here's the quote. Strong body makes the mind strong. As to the species of exercise, I advise the gun. While this gives moderate exercise to the body, it gives boldness, enterprise, and independence to the mind. Games played with the ball and others of that nature are too violent for the body and stamp no character on the mind. Let your gun, therefore, be your constant companion of your walks.
I know it. You scared me at first because I wasn't catching it at the beginning of the quote, but at the end, that's Thomas Jefferson, I think.
Absolutely, it's Thomas Jefferson. That's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
I sit there and I think about that one, and I think, the message there, and sometimes people probably breeze over, but the enterprise of the mind of carrying a gun, and it really does. I mean, it's the gun is a defensive tool, as we Second Amendment advocates embrace it, but it really does give carrying. It makes you more aware. It makes you, it puts you at equal with an attacker. So it really does give enterprise of the mind. Let's see, what do I have here? I got one more for you, and I didn't even know this one myself till 3 months ago. So I don't even know if I'm going to pronounce it right. But what does Molon Labe mean?
Molon. Oh, that's come and take it. Come and take, or come and take.
Yeah.
Come and take them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which that goes way back. Xerxes.
Yeah, and it's kind of now I see a lot of pro-gun folks kind of a statement of defiance. So good, you passed my you passed my Second Amendment credentials test.
I didn't get to. I don't want to take too much time, but going back to that Thomas Jefferson quote. I mean, one of the things I didn't get a chance to go into my real hobbies. I love history and I love reading. And when you read some of the founding fathers, I mean, even just the quotes on their views of the right to bear arms. I mean, it just couldn't be clearer exactly what they believed and the perspective they were coming from. I love Thomas Jefferson's quote that he has, about that, and obviously I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to get it perfect, but the idea that, when you have gun laws, it doesn't do anything to restrict the criminals. It only restricts the law-abiding citizens. That's obviously a concept that's near and dear to the Second Amendment movement. And it goes all the way back to Thomas Jefferson.
It's so easy for people if they want to just take a little bit more time, and because when you hear people speculate on the Second Amendment, say, well, in this now I think with Supreme Court rulings we're kind of past it, but 5-10 years ago people used to say there was still a discussion of this was about a militia, and you didn't have to go far, but do a little bit more reading, and you'd find plenty of quotes, and whether it's the Federalist Papers, I mean there's just dozens and scores of places to go read and understand exactly what they really meant when they formed that amendment, and so it just takes a little bit more reading and some of the other quotes from our founding fathers, and there'd be no question in anybody's mind what the intent of those was. So, well, good, Jonathan. Yep. So now a couple more things. How about how can people stay in touch with your campaign, help out? Twitter, Facebook, website. What's the contact info for you?
Sure. Well, I've got it all. I'm on Twitter and Facebook, are both just Steitz for Senate, and that's STEITZFOR and then Senate. So easy to find me there. I'm pretty active on both. I also have a website, which is www.steitzforsenate.org. It's O-R-G. And again, the spelling is STEITZFOR and then Senate. So those are the best ways to get in.
I'll throw this one out there because I think I went to the wrong one. I believe there's a SteitzForSenate.com, if I'm not mistaken, and that's not you, correct? Because I ended up there.
There is. That is a squatter, unfortunately, and I'm trying to get it back, but I have not had success yet. So you are got some kind of education blog or something up, which I don't know. It's nothing. Yep. But my campaign is .org.
.org, SteitzForSenate.org. Perfect. So my last question, customary for me to ask my guests, is what are you packing tonight?
I've got my Glock or my Glock G19, the Gen 4, little 9
Very
millimeter.
good. Excellent.
So,
well, Jonathan, I appreciate your time coming on the show tonight, and wish you the best of luck in the upcoming election, and look forward to you being, what do they say in the Senate, the gentleman from the 21st. We look forward to that.
I appreciate that, Nick. And one other thing I'll throw out there, just in case any of your listeners are going to be there, I will be at the Wisconsin Conservative Action Conference, which is next Saturday in Economawalk. So if any of the listeners are there, I'd certainly appreciate, come up and introduce yourself, and love to talk to you.
Jonathan, thanks so much for coming on the show.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Nick. Really appreciate it.
Have a good night. Yep, be well armed.
You too.